That was my favorite find. And up on the corner here is St. Mary's Basilica. It has the tallest freestanding polished granite spire in North America. Who polishes it? I don't know. It must be quite the task. And it is a basilica because a basilica is a cathedral that has been blessed by a pope. And we had a visit from Pope Pius XII in 1950, and he gave the blessing, and now we have this beautiful basilica. They have tours every Tuesday and Thursday mornings, and it's definitely a beautiful place to check out. Across the street from it, you'll see the old burying grounds. Started the day after Halifax was born. It has 1,200 headstones, but guess how many bodies? Like, let's keep in mind, it functioned for 100 years, just 100 years, there's 1,200 headstones. There are more than 12,000. Yeah. Halifax was a settler city at the time. There's lots of disease. All the doctors are still in med school. They haven't graduated yet. There's lots of mass graves, unmarked graves. But we do know that the guy who started the first ferry, John Connor, he's buried there, as well as the British Major General Robert Ross. He's very important in the War of 1812. He was given a special task. I don't know if you guys are going to like this story too much, being from the States. He was told to burn down the presidential mansion. He is that guy. He went down with his crew. He was very excited for such an important task. And he took his torch, put it up to the presidential mansion, and nothing happened. He remembered his grade 12 chemistry. Stone doesn't burn. The presidential mansion is made of stone. It just left a big black mark. So they go back up to Halifax all embarrassed. And then the cleaning crew wakes up in DC. They look at their beautiful mansion and paint it all white to hide the scorch mark. Quick as possible, and it's been called the White House ever since. I don't know if I should say sorry or you're welcome. Robert Ross was also a very beloved guy. He died in the Battle of Baltimore a few years later, but really loved Halifax and wanted to be buried here. His people knew that, so they looked around for something to preserve his body so that they could take him back to Halifax, where he's buried over there. But all they had was a cask of Jamaican rum. So they kind of look at each other, they nod, they shove their beloved general into the cask of rum, take him back up to Halifax, and before they bury him, they all pour a huge glass of rum, knock it back, have a drink with their general, Nova Scotia's first full-bodied rum. It's a terrible one. Now, the street we're on right now goes by the name of Barrington. And it's home to Grand Parade Square. This is where the military would do a lot of their drills during wartime, and now has our Remembrance Day celebrations and New Year's. And also the oldest church in Canada, St. Paul's. It was built the day that Halifax was built. It was the first building they finished, that and a pub. The church was first though, so priorities in line. Now, Barrington Street was originally rumored, it was supposed to be named Barrington
on the 11th floor of that building.
Governor.
The CIBC building.
Apparently, Barrington was an Irishman who was close with Cornwallis and kind of snuck himself in there. And they say that no, it's actually after this British guy, Barrington, but he didn't come into power until a couple years after it was named. So it's kind of like a cover-up. Barrington Street was also home to a wild riot. May 7th, 1945, VE Day. The war is over. Halifax is full of people. We're a military city again. So you have all the sailors coming off the ships from the harbor, coming into town, all the soldiers in their barracks at the fort. They all are on Barrington Street, eager to celebrate. But Halifax saw this coming. They said, we've doubled in size and we haven't doubled in services. We can't afford or deal with all these rowdy people. Let's just shut down everything. Let's close the door to every restaurant, liquor commission store. Let's keep everyone away. riots. They were breaking windows, looting stores. There was more than 35,000 cases of liquor stolen. It was not a pretty sight. But the story I like is that Alexander Keith's brewery, to calm the fury, it said that they opened their doors and welcomed in all the sailors to help keep some of it down. But 3 people still died, 2 from alcohol poisoning and 1 a possible murder. So it's not the happiest moment in our history. One story that I really like too is that we're the site of the first recorded bank robbery in Canada. Now, the bank was up, it was the first Scotiabank. It's back there, you can't see it, it's not the one that says Scotiabank. And the circus was in town. Barnum Circus was visiting for the first time, it's 1876. And everyone's out on the street watching all the animals go by, it's an exciting time. And right when it happens, a man, according to the police report, of decent appearance, sneaks into the bank, takes $12,000. It's a bit like a log flume ride. And in order to complete the transformation from vehicle to boat, we should do a big ribbit ribbon on 3. 1, 2, 3, ribbit, ribbit!
Whoa! You see that, baby?
Didn't know you're in for that, did you?
We're in the water now.
3 p.m., 4 p.m. dip tour. No, we are now in the Halifax Harbour, the 2nd largest ice-free harbour in the world. Number 1 is Sydney, Australia. And another important transformation has taken place. We no longer have a driver. We have a captain. And I'm no longer your tour guide. I'm your first mate. We can have anyone married, divorced. Like if you're feeling a little saucy, let me know and we'll like get up here, sing a little song, impromptu. Just remind me to divorce you before we get off. Now, on your left here, you'll see the Halifax Naval Fleet, half of our Canadian Navy. The 300 stands for the 300 series, which are the frigates. They are the war horses of the Canadian Navy. They are decked out. They have machine guns, torpedoes that launch straight up from the water, a nice landing pad for our Sea King helicopters, which have been flying around today, so you might see them.
But look at the flag.
And if you're a spy, this is a great time to take out your pictures and like get a good look at our Navy. It's also a good time in general to get up and look at the harbor and take some pictures.
Yeah.
Because this is a beautiful, beautiful place. I'll give you a couple seconds to take it in. Give you a little break from me. Now we actually just got one of our ships back earlier Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. Settled a year and 1 day after Halifax, making it a little brother to our big brother, creating some sibling rivalry. The Alderney was the ship that landed at the Alderney Landing, which is now the ferry terminal, and where we have concerts and festivals such as our Canada Day celebrations. Now, Dartmouth is known as the City of Lakes. It has 23 lakes within its borders. And Halifax is also known as the City of Trees, and I did count 23 on my way here to work today, so some good criteria. These two tall towers here are Purdy's Towers. They're the most photographed buildings in Halifax, probably because they're so pretty. Sorry about that one. You can look below and you'll see white cylinders coming out below. Those are going to the bottom of the harbor, taking the coldest seawater and running it through their air conditioning system. This saves them $100,000 a year in air conditioning. It's a very green technique. They change over their water every hour and a half. It was a system developed at Dalhousie University and is being hoped to use in more areas in the future. The start of the boardwalk, one of the longest boardwalks across saltwater. It's 3.8 kilometers and it starts at Casino, Nova Scotia, going all the way down to Pier 21, our Canadian Immigration Museum. Now, at Pier 21, it's said that 1 in 5 Canadians has a connection through it. It was a major site for all our immigration, all the waves of the Irish and the Scottish.
Wave.
That is a dog having the time of its life. It's like Jack and Rose out there, man. At the Immigration Museum, there's a lot of things smuggled when people are immigrating, lots of contrabands. Does anyone want to take a wild guess what the most smuggled item was? Sausages. Yeah. Apparently ladies would tie them into their hair, hide it in their buns, which I guess is like appropriate for sausage in a bun, and then put a big kerchief over and sneak them across. Up here you'll see a floating green, a new addition to the harbor. No one's hit us yet. Now, at the bottom of the harbor, there's not only the pipes that are getting that seawater, there's also 45 shipwrecks and 30 Volvos. Back in the Bedford Basin in the 1960s, there was a fleet of Volvos coming over for manufacturing. They got water damage on the Atlantic journey, and not being as eco-friendly as we are now, we tossed them over the side of the boat into the basin and only found it when we were doing some imaging of the bottom. 1969 Volvos. I think that's what you win if you get a hole-in-one over there. No, it's a Subaru. Alright, and you can see here the Halifax Ferry. It's the longest running saltwater ferry in the North Atlantic. It started with John Connor, just a man and his boat. He went twice a day from here to Dartmouth and back. It took an hour each way. We decided we needed to see a little bit more of Dartmouth than that, so now our ferry runs every 15 minutes, taking only 12 minutes to cross, and at $2.50 for an adult, it's the cheapest harbor tour. So if this wasn't enough for you, you can hop on the ferry. There's no guide, no bad jokes.